welcome to the Amateur Redneck Workshop. I'm Harold. I don't usually record anything this early in the morning because I don't really start to stir until afternoon, but I just thought I would. Anyway, before I get down to the topic of today, I went the other night to a little musical show put on by a local high school, and if I happen to find it on YouTube, I'll put a link down here somewhere, right somewhere down in here, and you can see it. They were really pretty talented. Anyway, I had driving along the road there to get to the parking lot. There was a sort of a T intersection, and I needed to turn down that T, and there's a lady sitting at the other stop sign across from me. And so I pull up, and she was there when I got there, I guess. And so I wait for her to go, and she don't. And then I turn on my signal light. She still sits there. So I get started forward, and I'm halfway, across, and about to turn left, and shoom, away she goes. It's a good thing I wasn't in a hurry making a fast left turn, or I'd have got nailed for sure. I don't know. I couldn't really see in her car much because, it was twilight, and all that sort of thing. She may have been reading text messages for all I know, and just all of a sudden looked up and decided to go. You see all kind of stuff out on the road. And so anyway, I went last fifth Sunday, which was the last Sunday in January. I went to the 22 fun shoot at my shooting club, and I took a 10-22 Ruger rifle. And I took a Ruger 22 pistol, and I took a Smith & Wesson 22 pistol, and everything I took jammed. Now that's the kind of luck that only a few special people could have, but I did, and what that didn't cost me, a lack of practice cost me others, because I picked the thing up, and the first thing I do is I try to aim with my right eye, which the sights are fuzzy. The left eye of the sights are clear. I can aim with that. But it's just, 70 years of habit. I've come up to the right eye. And then I have to correct and all this stuff. And that gives you stress. And stress makes it worse, So I got this down at Pirate Supply. Let me take that hat off. I got this thing down at Pirate Supply. And I don't know if you guys have been down there. It's where you get your peg legs and your hooks, for your hand and that sort of thing. And I figure if I wear this at the range, well, I got no choice but to go for the left eye and see if I can do that, and it'll train me up to work right instead of messing up. I got to do something because, I'm falling off bad in what I can hit. It's bad enough I had all those jams, No doubt. Maybe my equipment wasn't clean enough, or maybe I need to replace a few parts, or I don't know. Anyway, it didn't turn out too good, but it was still fun. That's which brings us up to a joke here. It seems that Bubba's folks, they come over here from England, and being from England, there had to be a lot of seafaring folks in the family, and one of them was Uncle Bubba, or Grandpa Bubba. He was actually Bubba's great grandpa, and he was a pirate, And so this British writer, he's in one of these waterfront pubs sitting there, and he sees this pirate come in with a pegged leg, a hooked hand, and a patch over his eye, and sit down at the table. So he goes over and introduces himself, and it's Uncle Bubba, Grandpa Bubba, and he says, "Well," "I say you appear to be a pirate," and Bubba says, "All right, that I be, matey," and he wants to kind of ask him about all these things, but he starts off kind of easy. He says, "Well," he says, "I noticed your pegged leg. What happened to your pegged leg? And, what happened to your leg there?" And he says, "I got it blown off with a cannonball off Madagascar." "Oh," he says, "well," he says, I see that you've got a parrot on your shoulder there. He says, "Where'd you get that?" And he said, "Oh, I got that in the Amazon." He said, "A bloody native was watching us bury our treasure." He says, "Oh, I took the parrot off his body, you know." So, guys, down there a minute. He says, "Well," he says, "Tell me about your hand. How did you get that hook?" And he says, "Oh," he says, "I was on the Spanish Main," and he said, "A ruddy Spaniard chopped me hand off with a broadsword." And he said, "Wow," so that you've had a lot of adventures, a lot of battles there. And he says, tell me what happened to your eye there?" And the pirate says, "Oh," he says, "Oh, I was standing on the poop deck, and," he says, a bird come along and he shite in me eye." The guy says, "Well," he says, "you know, that's terrible," but he says, "I never thought that sort of thing would put your eye out." And and Grandpa Bob says, "No, mate," he says, "it was the first day I had me hook." Yeah, even Bubba's ancestors had it rough. Well, anyway, we're going to talk about what I'm into here. This will probably be a 2 or 3 part video because number one, I'm procrastinating a lot, and number two, there's a lot of stuff to do. Of course, I don't have to, include the video of all of it. But what I got that Grizzly mill, and it's sitting up on the workbench, and it's just too darn tall. I got to climb up a ladder to change the pulleys, so I'm running at the wrong speed an awful lot of the time, and it needs some work on it. Something makes the thing vibrate like crazy. You'd think it was one of those etch things that you etch numbers with, and whoa, boy, that did bother you too. Anyway, so I got to get it down on something shorter, and so I'm going to build a stand. It's going to have some wheels under it, and it's going to be at least 10 inches shorter, lower down to the floor, and quit climbing ladders. After all, the most common reason for injuries in old folks is falls, and I've fallen off of everything out there so far, so probably I shouldn't be falling off the top of the workbench or off the ladder. About 4 years ago, I fell off the ladder out there when I started cleaning stuff out of the garage. I was getting a fan out of the ceiling, and I had tied off one side of it to keep it from falling. As I swung it down. Well, it seems it got down to the end of that rope, and I kept on letting it down without paying attention, and it yanked the 2x4 loose from the ceiling there, and it knocked me off the ladder. And I grabbed for the light fixture, and it knocked the light fixture down. And the light fixture got to the floor before I did, so I landed on all the busted glass and everything. And you know how lucky us rednecks are. I didn't get a cut or a scratch or nothing, but I did have some little cut marks inside my hands where I grabbed hold of that light fixture. But anyway, having that history and knowing I ain't getting any younger, I figured I'd get it down to where I could walk on a circle all the way around it. I can move it around where I want it. And I got some really nice steel wheels for it. They're not rubber or plastic or anything like that. They're steel. And in coming up with this stand, I sat around here and I drew up a drawing of it and material list and all this sort of thing, and went down to Steel Supply and got me a bunch of metal and come back, and I only missed 2 18-inch pieces that I should have bought enough for that somehow I got overlooked, but I went back and got that. And anyway, so I was looking through YouTube, and there was a lot of videos on this and that, and there come across a guy building a stand for a mill. And I watched it, and it was pretty elaborate video production. They had flames shooting up, and a guy riding around on one of those little two-wheel things that are catching on fire all the time. And I thought, well, yeah, I've seen his. He made his out of 1-inch square tubing, and of course he was putting a smaller mill on it, and he made a bunch of wooden drawers to go in it and all kind of fancy stuff, which I don't necessarily have any plans for. And then I searched around a little bit more. I thought, well, I'll just see how many people are making mill stands, and I found Mr. Tom Zelikman, and I got to watching his video, and he got the CAD drawing there, and I thought, son of a gun, that's exactly like the one I'm building. And as he went on there, I thought, darn, he's doing his just like I'm doing mine. and you know it's going to be 16 by 24, and on the base the wheels are going to be 36 inches apart, so that you know it doesn't want to tip over sideways if I run the table way over one way or the other. And when I got through watching his fine video there, which was really interesting to me, and I was going to give him a thumbs up, and I scrolled down and there's a blue thumb. I've been here. And then I thought, dang, and I don't even remember it. And so I guess maybe I was subconsciously I've copied his mill stand. And if I did, well, that's great, because I think he did a really grand design there. And up to that point, I was going to leave him a note saying, wow, your stand's just like mine. And I realized I'd been there before. So if you want to see a drawing of a nice CAD drawing of my mill stand, you just go over to Tom Zulickman's channel, and you can see it in its living glory. Otherwise, you have to watch what I what I drew with a pencil. All right, well, let's get on with the mill stand, and you know we'll see how much we can get done in this video. I'm trying to keep it down fairly short. Okay, so starting a new project here. I'm going to make a stand for that mill and get it off the workbench so that I can have it down a little bit lower and quit climbing on ladders and such. I've actually got a plan. I drew it up here and got all the sides, and I even used my special way of figuring things out to come around on the other side and figure out how long each piece I cut out ought to be out of these pieces here. And even though my saw doesn't cut incredibly straight, it cuts. I can imagine having to do this with a hacksaw. So, nevertheless, there's a whole bunch of pieces. There's 2, 4, 6, 10 pieces that I got to cut. And once I got them cut, I'll come back, lay them out, and we'll take a look at them. No use you watching this thing cut for hours on end. Well, there's a sign of the times. A Chinese saw cutting Mexican steel. Paid for by a redneck using US dollars. I wonder what we're backing them up with. I think I know how all this imported stuff business works. They pretend to sell us good merchandise, and we pretend like we're going to pay them with real money. Of course, eventually somebody's bound to get upset about it. Well, there's those two 10-foot pieces of 3-inch tubing, all neatly cut. Doesn't make as big a pile or look as impressive as it did when it was in the two 10-foot pieces. And I got a couple of pieces of 2-inch to fit in the missing two 18-inch pieces I needed. I don't know how I overlooked that, but I did. But before I get started on this, one of the things I've got to do is to fix that light. I don't know if you can see the blinking and flashing on here or not, but I think you can. And if I'm running out of those bulbs, I haven't looked for them just yet up on top of the garage, but if I'm running out of those bulbs, well then I'll just go ahead and use that as an opportunity to replace it with a LED light. I don't normally show junk like this, but I got that booger at Sam's Wholesale Club for 35 bucks, and I thought that was a really good deal. And so it'll either go on the back wall, or else it's going to go right here in the middle of the garage, right near to where the garage door rolls up. And I'm not sure which one just yet, so we'll go and I'll come back later. Well, I found bulbs to fix that one, so I mounted the little booger over here. And if you ask me, that thing is really a lot brighter than all these other lights. Look how bright it lights up that garage door as opposed to the dark corner. And over there, there's several fluorescent lights over there. I can see that I need to go back to Sam's and get more of these things. take down those old ones and forget about them, I guess, or something. Okay, let's get on with work. I was going to show you guys my wheels. Those are the wheels I got from Home Depot, rated at 300 pounds each. That ought to keep things rolling around without falling over or breaking. Like most projects that you do, there's something else that's got to be done before you get really into it. I ordered that nice big extension cord so that I can move the welder out here in the open space instead of being jammed up there between the drill press and the lathe. So, to move things around, what I need is wheels. Alright, so I started putting some actually good wheels on there. The wheels I had on it were buckling because they couldn't handle the strain, and so I get down to bolting the wheels down, and I discover that it's too tight between the metal and this nut here. So then I had to stop and go make myself a wrench out of my welding coupons there. But one thing leads to another and it gets really involved, so I think this whole project's going to really drag out. Alright, if you look back in this video a little bit, you'll discover that that welder there was up here on this shelf, and there wasn't any shelf down there. What I've done is I've got some angle, and I put the angle, if I can find my, across this end and the other end with the L pointing up, and then I put two pieces of it in the middle here with the L pointing down, you know, cut a little notch in the ends. And this piece of plywood fit just right to make a third shelf. And now I've got wheels that can stand the weight, don't bend over, and they're on that 2-inch channel. And I think that'll make it easier for me because I can roll this thing out in the middle of the floor, move the truck out of the way, roll it over there, and weld on pieces where I've got room. Like it was, I was just about as far as the extension cord could go from, you know, from the wall down to the welder, and that meant I had to weld in between this lathe and over here by, you know, in this little spot in the floor. So that was one of the several little jobs that had to get done before I can get started welding together all this larger tubing. And there was another little job that had been, you know, needing doing for a long time, and that was this pan to catch chips under there. I got tired of the huge pile of chips that kept piling up under there and piling up. And that pan is not sophisticated like many channels would have done it. It's screwed together instead of being welded together and all that sort of thing. But I hadn't welded a stainless steel, and I don't think right now is the time to learn how, when I'm learning how to weld enough stuff already. Welding, that's going to be good enough job for me and hard enough. So I guess the real putting all that stuff together will happen in part 2. So hopefully you'll come back for part 2, and I appreciate you watching, and if you haven't subscribed, please do, and click the like button, and above all, leave a comment of some kind. I need comments. Thank you.